You project reality. We collectively create this world. Many ancient myths and religions have, in one way or another, a reference to the waters of the deep. And it is always pertaining to a pre-existence, something that is void, yet the source of all things. We have the Tao, for example, which describes a constant flow of source energy that can't be depleted. It is said you can reach in and take out a scoop of it, and it will already be replenished despite you having had taken from it. In Christian lore, it is said that before the Word, that the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. So it would seem that nature is literally the image of God's word or frequency. The word or mind, sometimes called nous, N-O-U-S, molds matter according to its imagination. In Gnostic lore, we have the pleroma, a pre-existing state from which all things take form once we take chaos into our own hands to create order from it. In alchemy, we have the prima materia, or primordial material, that can be transmuted into anything, good or bad, selfish or unselfish, according to the alchemist that has mastered their craft. It is important to note that this is not to be confused with the materia prima, referred to in the literal alchemical transmutation of lead into gold or Saturn into sun, so to speak. But instead, prima materia is experienced as feelings of confusion, melancholy, and fear. Well, kind of like the darkness upon the face of the deep. That is not to be rid of, but transformed manually, just like the word mentioned above. The Hermetica mentions the Virgin of the World in a section called the Holiest Discourse, which is a library of information hidden away within the soul and only recovered through gnosis. It is the Logos, which is the activation of turning this sort of deep void of potential into the creative process. Speaking of Hermetics, it is mentioned in the Corpus Hermeticum that, and I quote, "Coming to be is nothing but imagination." This seems to refer to the expansion and fine-tuning of our sentience based on the knowing of the self and purification of thought, making one worthy of tapping into that bottomless well of creative energy. And we will come back to that after the intro. But ancient peoples are certainly not the only ones who have described this world of endless nothingness bursting with endless potential, because we too in our modern age have a similar concept, a concept that was birthed from one of the most important scientific experiments of all time. And just like all of the others before us, we call it by a different name too. We call it the unified field. So, for an in-depth look at the hard science of the double-slit experiment and measurement problem, I would like to refer you to the most awkward video on Earth, my first video, that despite its bunk-ass quality breaks it down quite thoroughly. But basically, science has found that all reality kind of non-exists as a wave function or superposition of possible outcomes that can't be considered real until it is viewed. When this wave function meets a conscious entity like you, it collapses into a particle, and of course, particles are what our entire world is made out of. Unlike that video, today I would like to learn together how to harness that power that we already have inherently, that we accidentally use in every moment, so we can aim, so to speak, these wave functions of possible outcomes to better our own realities, thus the betterment of all human beings. The way to this, of course, will be to compare the cold, hard science to mythology and scriptures that has been pointing us in that direction all along. And unlike the cold, hard science with all its rules and no-nos, the ancients might have a few hints as to how to turn these universal laws into art and expression passion, transmuting chaos void into desired outcomes. It is important to know that this is not a New Age philosophy. There are those who know these techniques and keep it to themselves. After all, it was J.P. Morgan who said, millionaires don't use astrology and metaphysics. Billionaires do. You know, sometimes these greedy fucks let little secrets slip. Nevertheless, manifestation is so much more simple when you let these laws engulf you by getting to know them like you do your buddy Nate. You gotta bond with Nate before he upgrades to Nathan, and then of course evolves into his final form, Nathaniel. The Neoplatonic school of thought speaks of the anima mundi, a divine, all-pervading consciousness, infinite yet contains within it or gives birth to all finite possibilities, therefore connecting the eternal, changeless worlds to our temporary world. If that is a brain twister, think of the software that came with your PC called Paint Workshop. Already existing on that software is every single possible thing that you can paint with the software. It is already there on the computer. It is simply your personal ability or knowledge of that software that determines your capabilities to create artistic images with it. The better you know the software, the higher the quality of the images you can create. But everything that you create was already there in the program waiting for you to pull it out. And I mean, there's your as above, so below lesson of the day right there, buddy. Let's talk about this water thing that seems to be pointing to our wave function pre-collapse thing we got going on in science. Hermes, who I am not one to argue with, said, in the deep there is a boundless water, fine intelligent spirit, and all existing divine power in chaos. And both Egyptian and Sumerian cosmogonies refer to this darkness or void as a fathomless sea. These philosophies, and all mentioned in our intro, from all over the world remind us of the science of the wave function collapsing into a particle when it comes into contact with a sentient being like a scientist who measures it. It literally looks and acts like water flowing and rippling until the person, whether it be the scientists, alchemists, or sages, etc., see it and recognize it, causing it to become real, reality, a particle. This is beyond coincidence, and I find it difficult to believe that the scientists who discovered this wave function collapse weren't reminded of this deluge of ancient teachings that have been here since, hell, obviously before we can remember. But in all cases, a primordial chaos of pure potential only exists in an undifferentiated state until someone turns it into what we loosely call real. It is up to us now to decide what those waters of chaos become. The art of transmutation can be roughly symbolized in an ancient diagram. The outer circle is the depths of chaos potential or wave function, from which occurs the triangle of the three universal principles, most often referred to as the Holy Trinity. From the three is birthed a fourth, or the square, which represents the four elements, metaphorically speaking. That is, of course, the world that we can see and touch. And most importantly, the inner circle. The inner circle is us. And there is no coincidence that it is also a circle. They didn't just run out of shapes. It is showing us that we are the unification of all things that the outer circle of chaos contains. If I could refer us back to my cheesy Paint Workshop analogy, the raw software is the outer circle. The triangle is the purpose emerging from that. The square would be the tools used to create, and of course the inner circle is you, the artist, using all of the above to create this picture of a cat playing golf or whatever. This famous illustration called Atlanta Fuegians maybe, has a philosopher demonstrating how the inner and outer circle are one and the same, hinting at the idea of the Philosopher's Stone. The keys of this union are said by Manly P. Hall to be love, counsel, prudence, and law. And we should probably keep that part in mind. Jesus himself said, "Let your eye be single and your body will be filled with light." And although it is speculated that he was referring to the pineal gland, and that may well be the case, it certainly does point to one of the oldest axioms that we have, to look within for answers and not to the external forces. Very much like the Buddha certainly had a good way of making sense of these complex teachings and making them very simple. Also, keeping it simple, he told us to, quote, watch, one word, which is exactly what an inner eye would be meant to do. We certainly should keep watch of our thoughts from a safe distance in order to study the patterns that they take on. And of course, to better know that we are not our thoughts, as Eckhart Tolle has taught us. Identifying as our thoughts is something that we all accidentally do, and it leads to a lot of unnecessary suffering. After all, thoughts become words in action, and words in action become our reality. If we are to meditate deeply, this will inevitably lead us to a connection with the outer circle, the pure potential of the wave function. And while watching that, and paying close attention to that inner, thus outer self, we can effortlessly find the purpose behind our whole being here on earth thing that we got going on. We got to go directly to source with this. You are the guru. So the Bible states that we are children of light. Light. Now, this brings us back to the wave function, as light acts like water. But what is light? Well, light is said to be made up of particles called photons, but we now recently know better than to call light a particle, as it just isn't. Instead, it seems to be an angle of what science has resorted to calling a messenger particle. The photons come from above, of course, the source being the sun. The sun is a depiction of eternal source in all alchemical symbology, because all that is and finite, including the moon, is only visible because it reflects the sun's light, or messenger particles. Here we get the hint that this is a representation of something deeper than the objective sun and moon. Basically, everything temporary comes from a nothing that is permanent. Keep this in mind for all of our videos here, as it is, like the art of sacrifice, key to this gnosis that we are seeking. Bill Donahue, a man considered to be mad by his church peers after he, being a preacher, began to teach what he called hidden meanings. He was quick to point out that both modern science and the Bible refer to a so-called wave offering. He likens light to be like sound, as they are both waves like fluid. Sound, of course, is just a frequency of vibration until it comes into contact with a person, where it is then identified and categorized. If you kind of see where I'm pointing here. We give birth from within us to what that wave of frequency objectively is and can be. Just like a person who is driving a car becomes the car, there are forces of light and sound that are driving us. Angled messenger particles, or messenger angels, if you want to get kind of fringe with it. And why not explore this fringe idea? I mean, all gigantic breakthroughs in science and society were once considered fringe. Am I wrong? Leonardo da Vinci, William Gilbert, Nicholas Copernicus, Nikola Tesla. It seems that the biggest influences in scientific thinking and modern technology came from spiritual people on the fringe, even today with the highly venerated Rupert Sheldrake. So I don't mind checking out Bill's ideas for a little minute. Let's look in the Bible at Numbers 6:20, where it says, "The priest shall wave them for a wave offering before the Lord." This is one of many references in the Bible of a so-called wave offering coming to man as a messenger. And what are angels' main purpose in the Bible? Well, they are messengers of God. God can't bring you the goods himself because your head would fucking explode if you saw him. Now, let's get back to science with the work of John Grivens, a respected physicist of London who found that when an electron vibrates, it attempts to radiate by producing a field, which is a wave going into both the future and the past. And, oh yeah, by the way, the quantum world does not give a fuck about linear time. Again, see that video mentioned above. But the offering wave going into the future remains a wave until it encounters an electron, which can absorb its fluid state and finally become fixed as a particle. So it is literally a kind of fluid that is seeking a fixed particle to be absorbed. I'm very much reminded right now of an old adage: people don't have ideas, ideas have people. We just have to listen and receive. And to listen and receive might involve renunciation of distractions like money, short skirts, and binge watching reruns of The Office. God, I still can't believe that Kevin spilled the chili. Oh, that was a disaster. But again, there we have another big coincidence of modern science, ancient scriptures, and meditation teachings saying the same shit. But what modern science does not address is that this is, well, communion, that which is above, attempting to send a message to that which is below. And we are connected to that divine source by the mind. The mind, of course, being the creative force within us and without us, as the second thing ever that follows the primordial first cause, or nous. Nous being an ancient term for the creative mind. The nous was produced by the first cause in order to experience itself as another. So in a way, separate in concept despite being the same. We are reminded that, like thoughts, we are not the mind either. Therefore, the mind is there for us to harness its creative power with proper discipline. The same discipline that it takes to carry a heavy pot of chili to the Christmas party. You got to watch every step. But we are so distracted by all that is physical, earthly ordeals that we completely miss the point of what is being sent down, like the sun in abundance. It's like we can see the forest for the trees finally, but now need to recognize the web of relationships occurring in nature of that forest for the trees to be possible in the first place. If you have ever thrown a ball for a dog and the dog failed to see where the ball went, what did you do? Well, you pointed to the ball, didn't you? But how did the dog respond to that? Well, that lovable pup didn't follow your finger's path, did he? He just stared at your hand. He doesn't understand the concept of hand gestures unless trained to. And I'll repeat that, unless trained to. I implore you that we are that dog staring at the master's physical hand for answers, but completely missing the point. The point. That one was an accident. No, it wasn't. I wrote it in my notes. That might be that joke might edit out on that. Not my best work. The point. No, I'm trying. Speaking of parallels between science and ancient wisdom, it is said by science that the early universe was threaded like that of a spider's web. And they say those words, spider's web. We, of course, can't help but be reminded that so many sacred texts speak of the cosmos as exactly that, a web of life of which all parts reflect the myriad of other parts and are indeed one and the same. Just as we, the inner circle, are one and the same as the outer circle. This should be no surprise because what is our physical body made of? Stardust. And what is our world made of? Stardust. And you already know who is quoted as saying the famous phrase, "I am that." So who or what is that? You need some paper? It's all good. So who Or what is that spider then? Well, astrophysicists have recently concluded that the universe is shaped dimensionally like a brain, that of 11 or more dimensions. Thoth, the Atlantean, of course, thousands of years before them, said that the all is mind, the universe is mental. So who or what is the spider weaving the web? You guessed it, it's the guesser themselves. The spider is you, the inner circle that reflects the image of the outer circle. No matter which path you look at it from, science, theology, hermetics, alchemy, mythology, etc., it seems we project reality. We control the universe because it is us quite literally. But we are so distracted by the circus world that we have failed to receive that heavenly gift, just like the dog that we spoke of above. And this being distracted is by design, by the way. See our video, Systems of Control, for more on that. Heads up, that's a really dark one. Intelligent light seeks intelligent light. This is manifestation point blank. Religious people are not allowed to look at the science, and the scientist is not allowed to look at religion, which frankly explains it better, or I should say more personable with more heart. But here we are again and again, two sides explaining exactly the same thing. I mean, when are we going to grow up? We are the universe experiencing itself, a notion that both Carl Sagan and Alan Watts can agree on. Both men who I think we all hold dear in our hearts who are no longer with us. In that same breath, I might say that we are God experiencing itself by the separation of the nous. To say that we don't have a purpose or any other nihilistic concept is just absurd at this point of our gnosis. I mean, look at the stars and then close your eyes and look within and tell me you don't feel that. It's there. It's always been there. Before you were born and after your body dies. It is and it always will be. It's beckoning, calling out to you, evolving through you, up and forward if we are to remember the keys passed down to us by Manly P. Hall, mentioned above. As within, so without. As the universe, so is the soul. Could it really be that simple? Well, let's find out. Let's take everything we have learned today and throw it away, if only for a moment. Forget the complexities, forget the details, forget your dharmic duties, forget that Kevin spilled the chili, forget everything and empty your cup with sincerity and completely surrender the results, because that monkey mind chatter will only get in the way of the divine messages that are blasting your ass 24/7, like the sun blasting your new redheaded girlfriend that thought hours of drinks on the beach would be a good idea. Hey, wait a second. Ariel, you know, the mermaid. She was a redhead who never saw the sun. How did she deal with sunburn? And by the way, she was 16, right? And Eric was 25? Dude, what the f***? It's a good thing she had no voice. She'd be bitching 24/7 about him buying the cheap SPF sunscreen. What the fuck was I talking about? All right, back on track. Well, actually, here. I might as well plug this bitch. I don't know if you guys saw the community chat. You can check that out every once in a while. See this on screen. Library of the Untold t-shirts are popping. All right, you got your logo there with the Philosopher's Stone on the back. All right, and I know all y'all are big fans of Abraxas and the Buddha Brat. It all comes together. You can thank my daughter for the design. These things are high quality. They're good. This one's got cat hair on it. Yours will too, for an extra cost. No, I'm just kidding. The cat hair is free. That joke wasn't in the script. I made it up on the spot. I know, it's crowd work in this bitch. All right. So sit down, close your eyes and relax. Breathe deep as perhaps the Wim Hof method, which is my favorite, but you do you. But get into that state one way or another. Drop the idea of talking to yourself as being silly. It isn't. Remember that you are not the mind. It will answer you. Ask yourself, what is my potential realized? And then shut the fuck up for a damn minute and let it speak to you, because it will. It might take more than once to get the full scope, but it will. The fact of the matter is that it doesn't matter how you do it. It only matters that you do. This means renunciation of the external world and the dark, uncomfortable confrontation with the worlds within. The dark that leads us to light, the chaos that leads to purpose, the sacrifice that leads to pleasure. Or as Carl put it, the absurdity that leads to meaning. Sometimes it's best that we stop seeking it and let it find you. The ball is already in the yard. Stop looking at the hand and start understanding what the hand is pointing to.
Divine guidance, blaring down from above our missing clouds, far and loud we